The attack on the USS Liberty lasted as long as the attack on Pearl Harbor, about 2 hours. You've heard the outrageous, implausible Israeli version of the attack on Liberty. You've heard what actually happened, told by the valiant Liberty crew. Now, hear what some of America's greatest heroes and leaders have to say. Colonel Mitchell Page was the last Marine standing after repulsing a Japanese regiment on Guadalcanal.
We all know that this was in international waters. It was an unprovoked, intentional attack on a U.S. vessel with one objective: to sink it and kill all aboard. Unprovoked attack. I think it was dastardly. I think it was a betrayal of any friendship that we may have had with that nation. And I think that it should be exposed to the entire world and all brought out so that the whole world would know the actual truth about that particular day in 1967.
Very widely could see this was an American ship. And not only did the Israelis attack it, they did this with their Army, Navy, and Air Force.
Though badly wounded, Navy Master Chief Bob Bush held off a Japanese advance while saving his commanding officer's life.
You know, it's impossible for me to figure out why maybe I would sit here and attack you when we're friends. I mean, they're getting our money to buy those French airplanes, and then they turn around and attack our ship when they can see that it's our ship. It's absolutely uncalled for.
Army Colonel Lou Millett led the last bayonet charge against vastly superior Chinese forces in Korea.
I was in World War II. I studied all the different types of aircraft so that when I shot at a plane, I made sure I was shooting at the enemy and not ours. They know what those ships look like, and if they don't, I can't conceive that they don't know. I do know this. It was a criminal act. It was an act of war.
Admiral Thomas Moorer is the longest-serving active four-star admiral in American history. He is the only American admiral to have commanded both the Atlantic and Pacific fleets. He was head of NATO forces, served as chief of naval operations, and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff for 2 terms. The Navy's chief fighter, the F-14 Tomcat, was named after Admiral Tom Moorer.
The question is, if the Israelis thought the frequencies they jammed were in fact broadcast by the Egyptian ship, why did they jam the American frequencies? There's no question about the fact that the jamming of the Liberty frequencies was deliberate and was undoubtedly ordered by high authority. Since a large part of the casualties were caused by torpedoed boats, could have been prevented from making those attacks by the aircraft that were on their way to help when they were recalled.
Admiral Arleigh Burke was known as Mr. Navy. His long and illustrious career was capped by him becoming the Chief of Naval Operations. The high-tech modern American Navy destroyers were named the Arleigh E. Burke class of destroyer.
And don't know yet why we didn't protect that ship. I don't know why the Israelis would take such terrific chances. It must have been something that was very important to them to decide to attack without considering the probability of war.
Recuperating from serious throat surgery, the Saratoga skipper, Joe Tully, spoke about the launch and recall of protective aircraft.
I had launch ready at that time 12 aircraft, conventionally armed, and I immediately launched them. And to my surprise, the America did not launch. About the same time, a message came from Rear Admiral Larry Geist, who was the Carrier Division commander, and who was not the officer in tactical command, but who was senior to me, who had somehow been given tactical command or assumed it, ordering the strike aircraft to return to Saratoga.
And it was the first time that the hot line, the red line between Washington and Moscow, had been activated. And the message from the United States to Chairman Kosygin at the time was, advise General Nasser that the American planes are going to be launched to determine what the status of the Liberty was.
I have spent a large part of my life flying over the oceans and identifying ships. And this ship was perhaps the easiest ship to identify that was listed in the United States Navy. Equipped with antenna from bow to stern, pointing in every direction. It reminds one of a large, vigorous lobster. And a look that made it extremely easy to recognize. And so I will never buy the idea that the pilots thought this was some other ship.
And it appeared from the ferocity of the attack that the intent of the attackers was to sink the ship. Maybe they hoped to have no survivors so that they would not be held accountable for the attack after it occurred.
We didn't know who was attacking us. They didn't know who was attacking us. Well, I don't know how Washington can say, don't go, because they're friends of ours. So that's the thing that's always bothered me right there.
I never myself accepted the Israeli purported explanation. Accidents don't occur through repeated attacks by surface vessels and by aircraft. It obviously was a decision taken pretty high up on the Israeli side because it involved combined forces. The ship was flying an American flag.
George Ball, the brilliant and courageous Undersecretary of State at the time of the '67 war, wrote about the attack on the Liberty subsequently. He said, "The ultimate lesson of the Liberty attack was that it had far more effect on policy in Israel than in America. Israel's leaders concluded that nothing they might do would offend the Americans to the point of reprisal." If America's leaders did not have the courage to punish Israel for the blatant murder of American citizens, it seemed clear that their American friends would let them get away with almost anything.
The fleet tug Papago would be our escort into Malta. The divers rigged a large canvas over the torpedo hull, and it was secured in place using ropes that were passed under the hull and over the main deck. Once the canvas was in place, the Liberty could proceed under its own power towards Malta. Once we were in dry dock in Malta, then came the gruesome task of removing the bodies and the debris from the research vessels. I was unfortunate enough to draw the first shift as part of our division, which would be used to cut the debris away from the bodies so they could be removed from the research phases. The first body to come out was almost unrecognizable. Due to being in salt water for 6 days, the body was almost completely hairless. We fingerprinted the body, put it in a body bag, and moved it out of the spaces. This continued through the night and on into the next day. After 33 days in Malta and the Liberty was repaired, we brought the ship back to Norfolk. Now it was over. The Liberty was home. Over. It will never be over until the truth is known.
began with the report of the casualties. The first word that we had out was before the torpedo attack that we had 9 dead and 75 wounded. This has been the number that has almost invariably appeared in the newspapers as an attempt to minimize the nature of the attack, the ferocity of the attack, and the unjustifiable nature of the attack.
There was no press campaign to cover this in its entirety for the benefit of the American people. As a matter of fact, in many cases, the press supported the Israeli contingent.